Do you ever finish lunch and feel like somebody pulled the plug out of the wall and drained every bit of life from you? Do your eyelids get heavy after a sandwich? Or your mouth feel dry even though you just had something to drink? Do you find yourself padding down the hallway at 2 in the morning, then again at 4, wondering why your bladder is acting like a church bell? Well, honey, I know that walk. I know the cold floor under bare feet, the little nightlight glowing in the bathroom, the worry that sneaks in when the house is quiet. I know the way a person can look at a plate of food and think, how can something so ordinary be making me feel so old? I'm Maria. I'm 92 years old, and I'm sitting here at my kitchen table with my tea getting warm beside me, telling you something I wish somebody had told me 20 years ago. My blood sugar is steady now. My blood pressure is calm. I do not take pills for sugar. I do not say that to brag, and I do not say it because I think I'm tougher than anybody else. I say it because, when I was in my early 70s, I was told to get ready. The way it was said to me, it sounded like, after 70, a woman's body just becomes a broken down house, and the only thing left is to fill the medicine cabinet. Your sugar is creeping up, Maria, the doctor said. You're getting older. This is how it goes. We'll watch it, but eventually you may need medication. Now maybe he meant well. Most doctors do. I am not here to tell anybody to throw away prescriptions or argue with their doctor. Lord, no. If your doctor gave you medicine, you take it the way you were told until you and your doctor decide otherwise. I have seen what happens when people get proud and careless. That is not wisdom. That is just being stubborn in church clothes. But I will tell you what happened inside me that day. I sat in my car in the parking lot with my hands on the steering wheel, and I thought, is that all? Is age the whole answer? I had raised children, buried people I loved, worked jobs where I came home with my feet swollen, made meals out of almost nothing, and I was not about to believe that my body had no say in this except surrender. The word they used was prediabetes. That little pre sounded polite, like it had good manners, but it scared me plenty. My numbers were not horrible, but they were not innocent either. My fasting sugar was higher than it should have been. My A1C had climbed into that yellow warning zone. And more than the numbers, I felt it. I was sleepy after meals. I was thirsty in a way that water did not always fix. I had cravings that bossed me around like a rude neighbor. I would tell myself, just one cookie, and then somehow 3 had disappeared and I was standing at the counter with crumbs on my blouse like evidence at a crime scene. At first I blamed age. Everybody seemed to blame age. Tired? Age. Dry mouth? Age. Stiff in the morning? Age. Waking up at night? Age. And yes, age is real. I am 92, not 22 wearing a costume. My knees announced the weather better than the television. But over time, I learned something that changed my life. Often, the trouble is not just the birthday candles. Often, it is what we are doing all day long without noticing. It was the little things, the toast, the orange juice, the coffee with sweet creamer, the healthy muffin from the grocery store that was really cake wearing a sensible hat, the crackers while watching television, the white bread sandwich because it was easy, the handful of candy from the dish by the door, the sweet tea at lunch, the second snack because dinner was late. None of it looked dramatic. None of it feels like they are doing anything dangerous when they nibble a few crackers over the sink. But sugar can be a quiet killer. It does not always come in with sirens. Sometimes it comes in wearing slippers. I started picturing my blood vessels like old pipes in an old house. I have lived in houses with pipes that moaned and clanked, and if you have too, you know what I mean. You cannot pour syrup down a pipe forever and expect it to stay clean. Sweet, sticky residue builds up. The flow gets rough. The whole system works harder. That is how I imagined sugar in my blood when it stayed too high too often. Not as one slice of pie at Thanksgiving, but as a sticky film from daily habits, coating those old pipes of mine little by little. And I thought, maybe I cannot make the pipes new, but I can stop pouring syrup through them every day. My first lesson came from breakfast. For years, I had what I called a light breakfast. That sounds so virtuous, doesn't it? Light. Just toast and jam, maybe a banana, maybe cereal with low-fat milk. Sometimes orange juice because I grew up believing juice was practically sunshine in the glass. Then by 10 o'clock, I was shaky and looking for something else. I thought I had no willpower, but later I learned that I had been feeding myself in a way that lit a match under my blood sugar and then left me standing in the smoke. So I changed breakfast, not with anything fancy. I did not start eating food I could not pronounce. I began drinking a glass of water in the morning before coffee, before toast, before anything. Just plain water. At my age, thirst can be a sneaky thing. Sometimes you think you are hungry when you are dried out like an old dish rag. I keep a glass near the sink, and I drink it slowly while the kitchen wakes up. Water does not solve everything, but it helps the body do its work. And it tells me, Maria, we are starting the day with care, not panic. Then I made breakfast more like a foundation and less like wallpaper. I put protein there. Eggs, Greek yogurt with no added sugar, cottage cheese, leftover chicken if that is what I had, a little salmon when I felt fancy, or beans with an egg on top. I stopped being afraid of a proper breakfast. I learned that protein in the morning steadied me. It was like putting a log on the fire instead of throwing newspaper in and wondering why the flame vanished. Now, I know some people hear protein breakfast and imagine a big steak and a bodybuilder yelling in the garage. That is not what I mean. I mean enough real food so my body does not spend the whole morning begging. 1 or 2 eggs with vegetables, plain yogurt with walnuts and berries, cottage cheese with cinnamon, a little turkey and avocado. Simple things. The kind of food you can make with your hair still sticking up. The next trick I learned surprised me because it was so humble. Fiber. Not glamorous. Fiber. The thing nobody talks about at parties. I grew up eating beans, greens, oats, cabbage, apples, lentils, and soups full of vegetables. But over the years, convenience crept in. White bread replaced the heavy brown bread. Crackers replaced beans. Sweet drinks replaced water. Little by little, the broom disappeared from my diet. That is what fiber is to me, a broom. It slows things down. It gives sugar something to bump into. It feeds the good bugs in the belly. It helps keep the pipes from getting coated with that sweet, sticky mess. And one fiber that helped me, especially when I was learning, was psyllium husk. Now listen carefully, because I say this like a grandmother who loves you, not like a salesman. I began with 1 teaspoon of psyllium husk stirred into a full glass of water about 15 to 20 minutes before a meal. Just 1 teaspoon, not a mountain, not a dare. I stir it and drink it right away, because it thickens if you let it sit there like wallpaper paste. Then I drink a little more water after. You must take it with plenty of water. If a person has trouble swallowing, bowel narrowing, serious stomach problems, or takes certain medicines, they need to ask their doctor or pharmacist first. Psyllium can get in the way of medicines if taken too close together, so I always leave space between it and medications or supplements. And no, I did not use it as an excuse to eat pie and call it medicine. It is just a helper. I remember the first week I tried it. I stood at the counter, suspicious as a cat, looking into that glass. I said out loud, "Maria, you have drunk worse things than this." I had. I drank cod liver oil as a child, and nobody asked my opinion. Compared to that, psyllium was nothing. It made me feel fuller, and I noticed I did not attack dinner like I had been lost in the desert. Over time, along with better meals, it helped soften the spike after eating. Not magic, just mechanics. Food going in slower, sugar arriving gentler. It made me wonder why nobody had sat me down and said, "Before we call this your destiny, let's talk about what you eat at 8 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon." Sometimes it feels like doctors are quiet about this part. I don't mean they are hiding secrets in a locked drawer. I mean the visits are short, the waiting room is full, insurance is breathing down everybody's neck, and it is easier to say, "Watch your diet," than to explain what that means when you are tired, widowed, on a budget, and eating alone. Watch your diet is not a plan, it is a cloud. So I made my own plan in my little kitchen, and I made it gentle enough that I could actually live with it. The hardest part was not the breakfast, it was the snacks. Oh, honey, the snacks. In America, we are surrounded by snacks like they are relatives at a wedding. The gas station has snacks. The pharmacy has snacks. The hardware store has candy by the register, as if a woman buying light bulbs might perish without a chocolate bar. Every television commercial whispers, "You deserve a treat." And maybe we do deserve treats. Life is hard. But I had to ask myself, is this treat treating me kindly? That question stung a little, because food is not just food. Food is memory. A donut can be your father bringing home a pink box on Saturday. A Coke can be a summer afternoon in 1956. White bread with butter and sugar can be a kitchen with your mother humming. I understand that. I am not cold-hearted about food. If you take away every memory from a person's plate, you leave them hungry in a different way. But there is a difference between a memory and a habit that steals from tomorrow. I decided I could still have birthday cake at a birthday. I could still taste the peach cobbler my neighbor made with pride. But I could not keep using sweetness as a pacifier 5 times a day. That was the myth I had to break in myself, that because I was old, small daily indulgences did not matter anymore. They mattered more, not less, because my body did not bounce back as fast. I stopped drinking sugar. That was a big one. Sweet tea, soda, juice, fancy coffee drinks with whipped cream tall as a snowdrift. Liquid sugar goes down so easy, you hardly count it, but your blood counts it. I began keeping cold water in the fridge with lemon slices sometimes, or cucumber if I had one, or plain seltzer when I wanted bubbles. At first, unsweetened drinks tasted like punishment. Then, after a few weeks, sweet drinks tasted too sweet, almost sticky in my mouth. That gave me hope. Taste buds can learn. At 92, I am still teachable, which makes me proud in a quiet way. White bread was another thing. I loved white toast. I loved it with butter. I loved it with jam. White bread is soft and comforting, but for my body, it acted a little like sugar wearing a bread costume. I did not ban bread forever. I am not interested in living like a scold, but I changed the kind and the amount. I chose bread with more fiber when I had it. I made open-faced sandwiches sometimes, 1 slice instead of 2. I wrapped tuna or chicken salad in lettuce, or put it on a bed of greens. I paired carbohydrates with protein and fat instead of eating them alone. If I ate oatmeal, I used plain oats, added nuts, maybe chia or ground flax, cinnamon, and just a few berries, not a brown sugar avalanche. And after meals, I walked. Now, when I say walked, do not picture me in athletic clothes marching like a Marine. I mean 10 minutes, sometimes inside the house, sometimes down the driveway and back, sometimes around the block if the weather was kind. 10 minutes after eating, especially after lunch or dinner. That little walk became one of my best medicines that is not medicine. The muscles use sugar when they move. They pull some of it out of the blood, like children picking up toys from the floor. A 10-minute walk may sound too small to matter, but small things done daily become powerful. A drip of water can wear a stone smooth. There were days I did not want to do it. Rain on the windows, dishes in the sink, a television show calling my name. My knees complaining like old men at the post office. On those days, I told myself, just walk to the mailbox. Then, just walk to the corner. Most times, I did more once I got going. Sometimes, I did not. That is all right. You do not have to be perfect to improve. Perfection is a trap that makes people quit by Thursday. I also learned to notice my own patterns. For me, lunch with white bread made me sleepy. Pasta without enough vegetables and protein made me restless at night. A sweet snack at 4 made me want another sweet snack at 8. If I ate a good breakfast, drank water, had vegetables and beans or protein at lunch, took my little walk, I felt like myself. Not young, exactly. Better than young in some ways. Steadier, less desperate. I began testing my sugar at home for a while because guessing had fooled me too many times. I am not saying everyone must do what I did, but seeing the numbers taught me. It was like turning on the kitchen light and seeing where the ants were coming from. I learned that some foods I thought were harmless pushed me high. Some meals I worried about did fine because they had fiber, protein, and fat. My body was not a mystery forever. It was giving me clues. One morning, maybe 6 months after I started, I woke up and realized I had slept through the night. I lay there under my quilt, looking at the ceiling, almost afraid to move. No 2 o'clock bathroom trip, no dry mouth like cotton, no heavy head. I thought, well, look at that. It was not fireworks. It was better. It was peace. At my next checkup, my numbers had improved. My doctor looked at the paper, then at me. He said, "What have you been doing?" And I told him, water in the morning, protein breakfast, more fiber, 1 teaspoon psyllium in water before meals when I need it, less white bread, no sugary drinks most days, fewer sweet snacks, 10 minutes walking after meals. Nothing dramatic, nothing expensive, no miracle from a bottle with a label promising to melt everything by Sunday. He nodded and said, "Keep doing that." I wanted to laugh, not because he was wrong, but because it sounded so simple after all the fear. Keep doing that. Sometimes the body does not need a lecture. It needs repetition, a little mercy, a little structure. Now, I want to be fair. Some people do everything right and still need medication. Bodies are different. Genetics are real. Illness is real. Stress is real. Sleep matters. Pain matters. Money matters. If someone needs medicine for diabetes, that is not failure. Thank God medicine exists. I have friends who are alive because of it. What I am pushing back against is the idea that after 70, we should not even try. That is the myth that makes me angry in my bones. Because I have seen older people treated like the ending has already been written. Like we are just waiting rooms with shoes on. But we are not done. We can still learn. We can still change what is on the plate. We can still walk down the hallway after dinner. We can still choose water over soda. We can still say, maybe my body is asking for help, not punishment. I think about my grandchildren when I talk about this. They are busy, like everybody now. They eat in cars. They drink sweet coffee the size of flower vases. They work on screens until their shoulders turn into knots. Sometimes I want to snatch the snacks out of their hands and replace them with soup, but I try to be civilized. I tell them stories instead. I say, your great-grandmother lived long enough to know that convenience can become a cage. Still, I do not judge them too hard. The world pushes sugar like it is love. Every holiday, every office, every school event, every checkout lane. If you are tired or lonely, sugar is cheap comfort. I understand why people reach for it. I reached for it too. But quiet comfort can become a quiet thief. It steals energy first, then sleep, then the confidence that your body belongs to you. When I say sugar is a quiet killer, I am not trying to scare you for sport. I have lived long enough to know fear only works for a minute. Love works longer. I changed because I loved being able to get up from my chair without feeling drugged after lunch. I loved walking to my garden. I loved remembering names. I loved not feeling ruled by cravings. I loved seeing my doctor's eyebrows lift when my numbers looked better. I loved proving, at least in my own small life, that old age is not a trash can where health gets thrown away. My kitchen changed too. I keep boiled eggs in the fridge. I keep plain yogurt, nuts, beans, greens, canned salmon, tuna, lentils, frozen vegetables, apples, berries when they are not priced like jewelry, and a jar of psyllium in the cupboard. I still have bread, but not as the king of the meal. I still have treats, but I try not to let treats become the daily boss. If someone brings me cookies, I do not slam the door. I put a few on a plate, share them, freeze some, or send them home with somebody younger who can chase children around the yard. There was one afternoon when my neighbor, Ellen, came by with cinnamon rolls. Warm ones. You know that smell. That smell could make a statue confess. I had just gotten my sugar steady, and there she was holding a pan like temptation in a church basement. I looked at those rolls and thought, this is where life gets complicated. Because refusing food can feel like refusing love. I took one small roll, sat down, ate it slowly after a proper lunch, and then I walked with Ellen around the block. We talked about her roses and her grandson's college bill and the price of eggs. My sugar did not go wild because I did not eat it alone on an empty stomach, and I did not eat 3 standing at the sink. That day taught me balance is not weakness. Balance is a skill. I wonder sometimes what other people would have done. Would you refuse the cinnamon roll because your health comes first? Or would you eat it because friendship matters too? I don't think there is one perfect answer. I think the answer depends on whether the cinnamon roll is a rare kindness or a daily habit dressed up as kindness. That is the part each of us has to tell the truth about. The truth for me was that my little bites had become a lifestyle. A spoon of ice cream, a sip of soda, a cracker here, a piece of toast there, a peppermint every time I passed the bowl. I was grazing all day like a cow in a cardigan. My body never had a break. So I began making meals more satisfying and snacks less automatic. If I was hungry, I ate real food. If I was bored, I made tea. If I was lonely, I called somebody. If I was tired, I rested instead of feeding tiredness sugar and calling it hunger. That sounds simple, but it took practice, especially loneliness. Nobody talks enough about how many older people eat sugar because the house is too quiet. In the evening, a cookie can feel like company. I had to learn to make better company for myself. Music while I cooked, a walk at sunset, a phone call. Folding towels slowly instead of rushing, sitting on the porch, saying a prayer, watching the birds argue at the feeder like tiny politicians. Life has sweetness that does not come wrapped in plastic. Over the years, my routine became ordinary. That is why it worked. In the morning, water, then breakfast with protein. If I am having a meal that might be heavier in starch, I may take my teaspoon of psyllium in a full glass of water 15 or 20 minutes before, making sure it is not too close to any medicine. I build my plate with protein, vegetables, and fiber before I think about bread or rice or potatoes. I drink mostly water, tea, or coffee without turning them into dessert. After I eat, I move for 10 minutes. I keep sweet snacks from becoming a parade through my day. No drama, no punishment, just respect. And let me tell you, respect feels different from fear. Fear says, if you eat that, you are bad. Respect says, how will this make you feel 2 hours from now? Fear says, you ruined everything. Respect says, begin again at the next meal. Fear says, you are old and broken. Respect says, you are alive, and alive means responsive. At 92, I do not chase youth. I have earned my years. Every wrinkle is a receipt. I do not want to be 30 again. 30 was busy and broke and worried about what everybody thought. 92 has its troubles, but it also has clarity. I know which battles matter. Blood sugar matters. Not because a number on a lab report gets to boss me around, but because steady sugar gives me steady days. It protects my eyes, my kidneys, my nerves, my heart, my old pipes. It gives me a better chance to keep my feet under me and my mind bright enough to remember where I put my glasses, though I admit sometimes they are on my head. The sweetest victory is not that I avoided pills. If I need them someday, I will take them with gratitude and the glass of water. The victory is that I did not let a prediction become a prison. I did not accept that after 70, sugar trouble was simply my fate. I asked questions. I watched. I changed small things. I gave my body the kind of help it had been asking for in its tired, thirsty, midnight bathroom way. So when I hear someone say, well, I'm just old, I understand the sigh behind it. I have sighed that sigh. But I also want to slide a chair out at my kitchen table and say, maybe, but tell me what you had for breakfast. Tell me what you drink all day. Tell me how often you nibble. Tell me whether your plate has fiber or just soft white starch. Tell me if you walk after supper or sink straight into the chair. Let's not blame your age for what your habits might be willing to help fix. That is not blame. That is hope with an apron on. I still have my checkups. I still get my labs. I still listen to medical advice. And I hope anyone hearing my story would do the same, especially if they already have diabetes, take insulin, take blood thinners, have kidney disease, digestive troubles, or any condition that makes changes risky. A gentle change is still a change. The wise way is to bring your doctor along, even if sometimes it feels like doctors are too rushed to talk about the kitchen table details. We can still ask. We can still say, what about fiber? What about walking after meals? What about sugary drinks? What about my breakfast? A good question can open a door. If my old life had a sound, it was the rustle of snack wrappers and the clink of ice in sweet tea. My life now has different sounds. Water running into a glass in the morning, an egg cracking into a pan, the spoon stirring psyllium quickly before it thickens. My shoes by the door after dinner, the soft click of the porch light when I come back from my little walk. Small sounds, strong sounds. And if there is one thing I want to leave on the table, right beside the napkins and the salt shaker, it is this. Getting older does not mean handing your body over to sugar. It does not mean every tired afternoon is inevitable. It does not mean every dry mouth and every nighttime bathroom trip is just being senior. Sometimes the body is whispering before it has to shout. Sometimes the quiet killer can be quieted by equally quiet choices. A glass of water, a better breakfast, a teaspoon of fiber in enough water, a walk down the street. Saying no to the third sweet thing, not because you hate yourself, but because you are still worth caring for. Maybe your kitchen looks different from mine. Maybe your doctor has told you something that frightened you. Maybe your mother lived on white bread and lived to 98, and your cousin eats salad and still has diabetes, and that makes the whole subject feel unfair. I understand. Life is not a math problem where every answer comes out neat. But I keep coming back to the same question I asked myself in that parking lot years ago. If age is not the whole story, What part of the story can I still write? At 92, I am still writing mine. And tonight, after supper, I will put on my sweater, take my 10-minute walk, and come back to my quiet kitchen, grateful that I did not believe the first scary version of the ending.